Hey everyone, thanks for joining me. I'm back with the Travel Collective, and today I'm excited to chat with Paul, a fellow traveler who has a love for the ocean, islands, as you can see. So, we're going to hear a little bit about favorite places he's been and some other things. So, welcome, Paul.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Yeah, thanks. So, start from the beginning, I guess. Do you feel like travel was something that was always kind of inside you, something you feel like your parents nurtured, or something you kind of discovered later in life?
Actually, when I think back on that, it probably was always there. It just didn't take precedence. And this is like a second career life for me, getting into this because prior to this, I was an academic professor and I did research and I did planetary science. And course of about, oh, let's see, about 2015 to 2019 is where life changed a lot. And then it led to basically where I am today.
Oh, that's wonderful. So, what was the first country you think you ever went to?
First country I did go to was when I was in the Navy. That's where I had my first dose of international travel. Maybe not the most luxurious accommodations, but it got me around. Let's see, almost went to Grenada during
Oh,
the
wow.
U.S. invasion in '83.
Oh,
That
my
did
goodness.
I didn't get on land, but I was offshore. But the first country was actually it was Israel.
Really? Oh, my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yes, first deployment was to the Mediterranean, and after Grenada, we went to the Med. Then we went off the coast of Israel and Lebanon when people weren't behaving well like they aren't now, and got as close to combat as I care to have ever gotten. And we had a port visit in Haifa, Israel,
Oh, wow.
and over the course of that cruise, went to Naples, Italy, went to Portsmouth, England, went to de Mallorca, Spain, and almost Turkey because some people got on shore, but everybody was called back after less than 24 hours, and I never ended up getting off the ship.
Oh, wow. Oh my goodness. So spending time on ships, boats, as you've just kind of alluded to, were you always kind of drawn to that, or that just kind of developed in your choice of following the Navy path?
Me getting into the Navy wasn't about any particular love of the ocean, right out of high school, although it may have been there, it wasn't the driving force. But the thing that really got me into it was in 2016, I found a windjammer sailing company down in the Caribbean, and I kind of salivated over their website for about 6 months before deciding I'm going to do this. And so I ended up doing a almost 2 week windjammer island hopping sail from St. Martin down to St. Lucia. And
Oh.
I just kind of fell in love with it. Aircraft carriers, not quite my thing. Tall ships, yeah, my thing.
Well, in those islands too, I mean, those are just some stunning islands, and they're not far from the United States either.
Exactly. It's not a huge travel problem getting there, especially St. Martin. That's in the Northern Caribbean, really. And it's each island has its own characteristics, the people on their own unique culture. And so there was that. And then there's just the sailing part of it. And it wasn't a big, tall ship. We only had about 30-ish passengers, crew of about 10. But I tell you, I could do that every day. Forever.
Well, and that's what you're trying to do, I think, now by launching Seadog Travels. Am I correct?
Right. And this company is the result of, I actually got into travel in 2017 when I was invited to basically take over a company that had not been formed into something real. And why I say that is it was just a group of people in New York who I were acquaintances with, and this woman had this social club, and she left for a real company, and she had a friend take over, and he apparently couldn't do anything with it. And then I got a call one day and said, "Hey, Paul, you want to take this over?" And so I realized pretty quickly that there was no way that thing was going to work. So I turned it into a small group travel company. So then I spent the next 3 years failing at everything.
Oh no.
Failing at everything because I had no business experience, was one. The partners I had in the company didn't do any work. And I realized I needed to know a lot more than what I knew about what I was doing. So I tried to fix that, but looking back, there's no way that was ever going to work because it just was not right, not the right mix of people. There was nothing unique about it. It was just kind of a generic group travel company. And so it died a very merciful death in near the end of 2020. But after that, I asked myself, do I want to try this again? Because honestly, it was more or less a painful experience that I don't want to go through again,
Yeah.
um, in a lot of ways. But I said yes, but I want to do it my way, and I want to do something that is relatively unique, something that'll be a little bit different. And that's where I came up with Seadog Travels. Being an ocean themed travel company, one thing I found is most travel agencies and companies really don't have an overarching theme to what they do. You know,
Yeah.
they might have destination focus, they may have a type of travel focus, and that's perfectly good, but there's no real theme that drives what they do. And so I wanted to have that, and I wanted to obviously do something that I liked. And so that's where the ocean theme came about. And so I've been, even though it was in the pandemic at the end of 2020, knowing that there's not going to be any travel for a while, that was okay. It gave me an idea to kind of weed my way through how I wanted to do this. And now in 2024, things are starting to happen, which is really good because I've being a college student, as I remember, I was quite poor,
Yeah.
and I was quite poor again doing this. And so it's like, okay, we want to get back to having a reasonable income. And so, but things are starting to happen now, which is not really kind of exciting.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that's so true. If you're going to put your efforts into something, there's so many different ways to travel, but do something you're passionate about because that's what, people are going to be attracted to you and your love of the ocean and sailing and that type of thing. So I agree. So tell us about some of the types of travels people can book through you.
Well, we uh, are developing, okay, well, we have, first off, we have the general travel agency services that, you can use for anything. That's there, although I don't really emphasize that a lot, but I can book anybody travel anywhere. But group focused tours, and I'm starting with selected destinations. It's not like do everywhere. I'm focusing on maybe a half dozen or so destinations, such as the Florida Keys,
Oh, nice.
Maine, um, definitely Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, the Bahamas, and down in St. Lucia. I actually have a local contact down in St. Lucia who I'm working with, and we are working together to promote travel to St. Lucia, and that's actually already generated some fruit. And that's been a really productive business partnership. So those destinations, I'm focusing on those. I just returned from a trip to Puerto Rico, went across the entire island. It was an absolutely great time in 5 days to go across the entire island. And Puerto Rico is going to be really one of my primary destinations because I've been there a few times now. I have a good handle on the island, and I have the connections with local transportation providers, local tour companies. I know what it's like there, which you really need to know what it's like to be there. And really, and working with Discover Puerto Rico because they're the main tourism gig promoting travel to Puerto Rico. And I have the contacts with them now to do that. So, and it's also really, really building the network. You have your travel, but building the connections at the places where you travel is really important because being able to provide really full service, comprehensive service is much better than just, okay, we'll book your travel or we'll take
Yeah.
you a tour. We can do everything. And that's really important.
Yeah, I think so too. Especially with
That's the group. Yeah, that's the group tours. The other is cruises. I can book any cruise line, but I'm focusing on a half a dozen um, cruise lines that I think are a little bit different and I think a little bit better. I like them better. So, I have my prejudice, but I think there's some merit to it. Like Star Clippers, it's one of the tall ship sailing companies.
oh,
Um, I've booked them more than anybody else so far, and I really have a very good relationship with that company. Like Virgin Voyages, I really like the way they have developed their business model for cruising. They not only focus on it being inclusive, not just all inclusive when you go there, but as far as everybody is in welcome there, they are really more forward in welcoming people of all types onto their ships than anybody else. Everybody else might be all inclusive too, as far as inclusivity, but they don't really promote that as much as Virgin Voyages. And it's a really good vibe. The company has a really good vibe to it, and I really like them. And other companies like Atlas Ocean Voyages, they do polar expeditions. I think that is really a really neat angle for them, and others. And so there's that. And just now also getting into destination weddings
Oh, wow.
to the destinations where we do the group tours. And we have the infrastructure. I'm working with some wedding companies in the Caribbean where we can do all inclusive planning and wedding conduct for groups that I could not do it myself. So obviously, what do? You find the partners where you can do that. And so that's just getting underway now.
Oh, yeah, that sounds amazing. So, as far as Puerto Rico, are there good times that people should think about going to Puerto Rico? Um, would you consider it an all-season destination? Because there is hurricane season, so maybe there's better
Yeah,
times of the year.
that is the off season because of hurricanes. Basically, from now until October, that's when the hurricane season generally goes. Or it can go a little bit later, but that kind of applies to all of the Caribbean. You can get somewhat cheaper rates going this time of year. Um, when I came back, we were really fortunate. We didn't have a lot of rain.
Oh,
There was
good.
rain around, but it just wasn't on us,
Yeah.
which is always good. We were lucky that way. But so and in the on season from basically what January to May, yeah, it's extremely busy.
Right. And you would want to plan ahead then and work with someone as far as lodgings and all of that.
Right. Yeah, plan ahead at least 6 months in advance, I would say, if not more. More like a year would be the best way to do that, especially during the busy season.
Yeah. Touch on that first company that you mentioned about the cruising. Was that a tall ship
Yeah.
company? That sounds really unique and interesting.
Oh, you Star Clippers?
Yes.
Yeah, Star Clippers, they have three tall ships. They can handle from about 160 to 220 passengers, so they aren't that big, but they're big-ish, football field size. One ship, the Royal Clipper, is the largest. Then they have two sister ships, the Star Clipper and the Star Flyer, and they do sails in the Caribbean and over in Costa Rica and over in the Mediterranean. And I do webinars. I've done several webinars with them, as well as some other cruise companies. And it's, they can only handle, there are three ships, and there's kind of a hint that a fourth might be on the way, but I don't really know any details about that. But it's just it's not like a typical cruise. That's the thing. You're close to the ocean. They run on wind power 80% of the time.
Yeah.
Um, it's kind of elegant but not stuffy. It's like casual luxury because you're on a tall ship. It's very relaxed, and yeah, from my experience, it's just way better. You can unwind completely, and of course there are port visits and such, but it's a nice way to travel. It really is.
Yeah, I like the idea that if you like the water, you like the idea of being on the water, you're that much closer to the water because I've not personally been on one of the large cruise ships, but I saw them recently when I was in Barcelona, and they are massive. I mean, they're like stories high. I was like, "Oh my gosh, I've never been that close to really, pair how massive those large ships are that are cruising our oceans."
Yeah, and you don't realize it really until you're on one of them. I was in Galveston last year, and I had the chance to get on two Royal Caribbean ships, and they held about 4 to 6,000 people
Wow.
each. So, and you see, my base of reference is an aircraft carrier. They held about 5,500 people, so they're basically aircraft carriers, but just a lot nicer, you know.
Right. Yeah.
Um, so, yeah, don't just have rubber chicken for dinner every night. The food's a little bit better too. But yeah, they really are floating cities of sorts. Um, really more geared toward at least those ships, entertainment, casinos, water activities, pools, things like that. There's a lot to do, and of course they have good food, and they certainly have their place in the market. But it's just a different experience. It's like, or you could call it a floating hotel,
Right.
the way to describe it too, or resort. And it has benefits, of course. You don't have to travel to a lot of different places to get there. Or you actually reverse that. You do get to visit a lot of different ports on one ship as versus just going to a land resort. So they do have their uniqueness, and what recently Royal Caribbean came out with their super big ship, the Icon of the Seas. So that's the biggest right now. But it depends what you're looking for. It really is. If you have a family with kids, obviously the entertainment aspect is important there, um, or what you like to do personally. So every, you know, type of ship has its place. But I have my preferences just like you.
Right, exactly. But I do like that idea of the star clippers, which not everyone may be familiar with, because it does give you a smaller experience. Are you able to go into some ports that maybe the larger ships aren't able to access?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's one of the benefit of all the small ship cruise companies. They can get to the ports that the big ships can't get to.
And what are some of the route? Oh, you mentioned the star clippers kind of do the Caribbean as well, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Do they have upcoming cruises that you're excited about or that you want to share a little bit about?
For Star Clippers this summer, they're in the Med for the summer, and they're typically in the Caribbean during the fall. Really, some of their most sought after sails are the ones that go to Costa Rica. That's very
Okay.
much a nature focused experience. The short excursions for those are a little bit more involved. As far as it takes a little bit of effort, there's some hiking, there's a little bit of roughing it as versus some of the others. Um, and people like that. And that's something that also isn't that far away.
Yeah, that's nice. That's really excellent. So, how is your travel company planning to kind of contribute to some of the local? I know in previous conversations we talked about conservation and some of those types of efforts too, and kind of this whole idea too of going green and being more cognizant of how we travel.
Right. And that's especially on the cruise side of things, the lines I promote do fit that niche. When Star Clippers being the wind power, Virgin Voyages, for example, is very heavy on sustainability. And they're all going in that direction, some just more quickly than others. And one of the long-term goals that I have for my company, and actually the original idea I had, is that, and it goes back to the tall ships. Uh, Given I can find the money
Yeah.
and make the model work, uh, have a fleet of maybe 5 or 6 tall ships in the Caribbean and do these thematic sails, but
Oh,
also integrate ocean science and conservation into every sail where passengers don't really have to do anything. It's integrated in where, say, we're contributing to research projects in the Caribbean, and people can also enjoy their sail at the same time. So, and I'm actually taking the first step to do that. Um, I am a little bit crazy, so the
it's
reason I say
okay.
that, I'm now going to get a master's degree in oceanography. I'm starting that this
Wow.
fall because my thinking is, okay, if I'm going to promote ocean science and conservation as a part of the company, well, I need to know what I'm talking about. I have a lot of academic background, but not in that. So here I am. The only logical thing to do is go get another degree, which is crazy according to some people, I'm sure, but that'll take 2 years, and I'll crank through that. But that will be useful. And that'll give some legitimacy that, well, we know what we're talking about and that we want to really be involved in the conservation and science part, because it's an very important thing going forward. We can't operate, business as usual in the travel industry like it was basically pre-pandemic.
Right, exactly.
And another one program we're already involved in now is we are a part of the Four Ocean Wavemaker program. Four Ocean, if you're not familiar with them, is their mission is to take plastic out of the ocean. And they have this new program where they basically have people like me who are helping to promote their mission and to spread the word about them, and but make that a part of our company. So that's really our first partnership on the conservation side of things, which I think is great. And we're also contributing to their plastic neutrality program. We're making a monthly contribution to pull X amount of pounds of plastic from the ocean every month. And so we're trying to, make a contribution, even though we're a young company and we don't have buckets of cash, but we
Right.
started getting into that uh, movement and trying to make a difference.
Yeah, I think that is huge. I mean, especially since you have a company focused on the ocean and just generally the people that are probably drawn to a ocean cruise hopefully have some interest in the fish and the wildlife and all of that. And we have a responsibility, hopefully we feel that to take care of these environments because we are seeing diminished numbers of fish. For example, when I went to Alaska last year, I mean, there's certain types of fish they're not even able to catch or, any some of that happening now. So this is wonderful
We
that we're
can't, right, we can't treat the ocean as a garbage dump anymore. And it's been too much of a afterthought, and all the plastic and just garbage in general that gets into the rivers and waterways. Well, it flows to the ocean, and then it's even though it's predominantly in coastal areas, it breaks down into microplastics, which is another problem. It goes into the
yes,
deep ocean, it gets into the food chain, it gets into the fish. Well, you know what? If it gets into the fish, it'll get into us,
right.
and that's not good.
No, definitely not. So how do you ooh, I have a couple questions. Do you have a funny story to share from one of your trips?
Uh, a funniest story. Haven't I had a lot of trips yet? So, well, from any trip, I suppose. Um, I guess I remember one trip to St. Lucia, and this is really kind of trivial, but it's kind of common sense and afterthought is if it starts to rain and you're wearing flip-flops, don't run, you'll fall over.
Yeah.
I ended up somersaulting a couple of somersaults in the rain because I just decided to start running in flip-flops. That was just a bad idea. Didn't hurt myself, but it was kind of a bad idea.
Well, it's okay. These are all things that we learn. I mean, whether it's
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. You don't
hacking.
you don't you don't know until you get out there and do stuff.
Exactly, and you often don't, the other thing, like, I recently learned is sometimes we try to pack too much into an itinerary, so I like the idea of the sailing ship. I think that kinda slows people down a little into that more rhythm of, not rushing, actually enjoying the process of the experience of being on the water and hearing what, the ocean and just seeing how
Yeah,
people handle the sails and all of that.
it's a case of where you don't want to go home because you want a vacation from your vacation, where it's too busy. And some people like the active vacations, and that's perfectly good. But really having a deep dive into what you're doing and the destination, that's really the goal to do that. And that's the whole reason for travel is you don't go somewhere just to go. You want to have an experience. You want to have a better understanding of what you're doing, and your impact, whether it's other cultures, nature experience, to have a deeper understanding of really what's going on and how everything works.
Yeah, exactly. And I know you mentioned too, prior to the call, like even going like long term, possibly having some scientists and some, really niche type experiences for travelers on some of your boats.
Right. And in addition to that, I had a conversation with a nonprofit before I went to Puerto Rico, is to develop some Antarctic cruises where the groups work with scientists on board to contribute to research projects down in Antarctica, for example. Because one thing these cruise lines that go to Antarctica are doing is they are getting into the conservation and science side of it. For example, Viking cruises, they have scientists on board doing research projects. Atlas Ocean Voyages just started a new program. Um, they're working with, I want to say, a penguin focused nonprofit down in Antarctica. But the thing is, they're all starting to add these types of activities into their cruises. It's not just you go and experience it, which is
Yeah.
amazing in and of itself, but they're actually helping to contribute to research and preserving the environment, which is, again, something that we need to do. They're
Right.
recognizing that.
Yeah, exactly. Or I was just thinking when you mentioned Costa Rica, a lot of photographers tell me about all of the birds that they like to witness in Costa Rica. So again, just maybe working in, taking account of what birds you're seeing, or, I've heard scientists even sometimes want the photographs because they might catch some different type of behavior or something that's different. So,
Right, absolutely. There's a lot that needs to be done. There's a lot that we still need to learn. An amazing fact about the ocean in general is even though more of the ocean floor has been mapped now than ever, and it's, I want to say 26 to 30%, it's around there now. But as far as data from the ocean, there's so much ocean out
yeah.
there, lots of areas that have scant or very little data on them. And it's kind of like the analogy to outer space. It's it's kind of big.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
you have to have the resources to study it. And so it's similar in that way is there are only so many resources currently that can focus on ocean science because there are only so many ships and so only so much funding to do that. So there really does need to be more.
Yeah, exactly. What are some things that travelers should think about if they're considering, that's their first time, like myself, I've never really taken a cruise. What are some things we should think about or questions that you ask to help pair up a traveler with the right expedition as such?
Right. A lot of a common question that someone has is getting seasick.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
a really common question. And on the smaller ships, obviously that's more of a concern, but it's really not much of a concern. If you're severely seasick, if you're or easily seasick, that could be a problem, obviously. But there are Dramamine patches. There are things that you can do to try to prevent that. And frankly, if you do start feeling a little queasy below decks, just go topside in the air, and that's where you want to be if you feel a little seasick. But on the sails I've been on, nobody got sick because
Oh,
it's
wow,
it's
that's
pretty
great.
common. Just stay away from the bad weather, and it's at night is great because when you get in your bunk, you kind of rock to sleep. You get
Yeah.
naturally, it's kind of nice, so you get to go to sleep to that. But on the bigger ships, even the Star Clippers type ships, it's going to be even more subdued as far as any kind of rocking, and it's not that much of a concern for most people. Just be prepared, maybe bring some Dramamine along, and just in case. But don't worry about it otherwise. And on the big cruise ships, unless you're in a storm, you're not going to notice anything.
Yeah, I mean those large ships look really, really solid. So unless there's some serious weather, I can't imagine it moving too much.
And they add stabilizers also. So the design takes into account ways to make them more stable so it doesn't bother people also.
Yeah.
So, and really for people as far as traveling, it's really what do they want to do? For a couple, for you know, groups of four, small groups or individuals, it really has to be tailored around what they want to do. And earlier this year, back in March, I had the craziest experience I've had so far with the traveler. I received a call from ultimately it was his sister in the beginning saying that my brother needs a travel planning for his birthday. He doesn't have time to do it.
Oh,
It's to
okay.
leave in 3 days.
3 days?
Yeah. So,
Oh my gosh.
and he wanted to go on a cruise. And it's like, okay, well, let's see what I can find. Well, I found one cruise line, MSC, that had an open-jawed cruise from Italy to Spain
Oh my
that
goodness.
fit his timeline. And I got the hotels booked, I got the cruise booked. But I tell you, it was kind of sweating some
Yeah,
bullets there because,
exactly.
and the flights too. So everything had to be coordinated and I had to have it lined up correctly. Uh, so everything flowed well, but ultimately it did. But I tell you, that's the kind of thing that kind of keeps you up at night and double checking and double checking and double checking again.
Right, especially for your side, like, okay, are they gonna get to the right destination and get on the right ship? And oh
Yeah.
my gosh, that's
So
incredible though.
yeah, so please people plan a little bit in advance.
Yeah,
At
don't
least a
wait.
week, at least a week.
Yeah, exactly. Don't wait till 3 days before. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
what?
yeah, so it's oh go ahead.
No, no, no. Go ahead. What?
It's just a matter of, and then for groups, groups are a different beast, and again, it really kind of depends what they want to do. I had a group that wanted to just go to the El Yunque rainforest in Puerto Rico, actually, and I worked through a third party for that. I found a provider on the island to do that on the dates that they wanted. Um, and so it's people and organizations come out of the blue, and it's really a matter of tailoring it to them, obviously. But as far as from my perspective, hopefully, we'll be able to attract people and companies that are really interested in being a part of the conservation and science movement for the ocean to maintain its health. And, we're going through our fourth global coral bleaching event right now. Started in the late 90s, and that's climate change. And that's something that must be addressed, or we're not going to have any natural corals uh, left by 2050. And
Wow.
that's just something that's, it does have an impact. And, again, we're moving in the right direction, but the question is, are we moving fast enough?
Right. Exactly.
That's the worry.
Yeah, that is the worry because I was just listening to a travel journalist today, and we're recording this in June, about the massive numbers. I mean, TSA is recording the highest numbers of travelers ever. So the demand is there, but how do we balance that demand on these locations, on these destinations without literally just destroying them?
Right. It's a balancing act for sure. And I thought it interesting that every year photos lists, the
Right.
travel joint, they come out with their do not visit sites every year because of over travel and things like that. And it has to be taken into account because frankly, there are just some bad tourists out there that don't behave. And unfortunately, I have an example of that in Arizona is up at Antelope Canyon, which is in northern Arizona. If anybody's ever been there, it's these beautiful sandstone caves
Yeah.
carved out by rainwater. And you go in there, and it's the neat thing about it is that you can see pillars of light coming through the openings above, and it's really striking. But some people have carved their initials into the rock and that kind of thing. And it's like they're told not to do that, but they do it anyway. And come on, let's just be adults.
Yeah, exactly. And let's not all take a crack off things from monuments or even, it's that whole analogy of honestly you think, oh, it's just a pebble, it's just a but if everyone takes from these like places, I think I want to say it's actually off in Wisconsin. There's an island and it's in Door County and it's got a white rock beach. But if everyone takes a white rock off that beach, I mean, eventually there's just not going to be any more white rocks there, so to speak.
Yeah, and it's just kind of the mentality of, leave wherever you go, leave the place untouched. Leave no trace behind, and that's not that difficult. And like cruise ships are really getting in that mind frame of trying to do better at waste management. For example, that's the big downside of cruise ships, the waste disposal. But they're
Yeah,
working on it. The the single use, silverware, that's going away. Straws are going away or making biodegradable. So everything is moving in the right direction. But with almost 9 billion people on the planet and so much garbage being produced, it really does take a concerted effort to really try to address the problem, because it's it's out of control obviously now, and it needs to be kind of reined in.
right, exactly. So what's on your travel next list? Where to next for you, Paul?
I really love Puerto Rico. I'd go back tomorrow.
Oh, that's great to hear.
um
Because honestly, I think there's a lot of people, and I'm gonna say I'm raising my hand, I'm one of them, that live in the United States and don't realize all that's there in Puerto Rico. So maybe talk a little
so
bit more about
yeah,
Puerto Rico.
so the first thing people should realize is it is extremely similar to the mainland. The roads are good. The infrastructure is good, more or less. They had a Hurricane Maria back in 2017, and that was devastating. I heard stories of that, about how the whole island was basically turned brown.
Oh,
All the
wow.
leaves and all the trees were basically pulled off. It was a Cat 5 that went over the island, so they
Wow.
had to recover from that. Um, and their power lines are just above ground, and no wonder they get knocked down easily.
Yeah.
But more or less, it's very similar to being here. The people are great. Um, Different parts of the island have different unique characteristics. For example, if you go to the West Coast, it's a very surfy beach vibe. A lot of
Yeah.
good beaches out there, a lot of good surfing. If you want to and go to the East Coast, you have that too, but you have the two islands off the coast of Puerto Rico, Culebra and Vieques, that you can take day trips
Oh,
to.
nice.
You can go to San Juan if you want the city vibe, if you want the nightlife and kind of the modern urban chic experience. San Juan can do that for you. If you want the culture, go down to Ponce on the southern coast. And the great thing about accommodations is it's not just big resorts. They're there, but it's certainly not just that. Puerto Rico has kind of made an effort to promote family businesses, villas, small inns
Oh,
that people
nice.
can go to that are kind of off the beaten path. That it's a much more local experience with those, and that's really nice. And of course, the food was awesome. Had not eaten so much food in 5 days. I thought I'd gained 20 pounds. I tell
Oh my
you,
gosh. Oh, wow.
I just, it's we had 3 meals a day, and I don't eat 3 meals a day at home.
Right,
And
right.
it's like I'm gonna die just of joy because the food's so good, and it was just everywhere. And so it's really it's and there's a lot to do. You can go to the rainforest, you can go to beaches, you can go to caves, you can there is a real large diversity of activities that you can dip your toes into while you're there. So it's a hidden gem, and no passport, you don't need that. You get lots of direct flights. For example, from Denver, you can go pretty straight from Denver to San Juan on the West Coast,
Oh,
and
nice.
it's convenient. And right next door is the U.S. Virgin Islands, which is pretty much the same thing. And so they're all right there, and we're pretty close.
Yeah, that
So
sounds
as far as
great.
I'm going in July, I'm not going anywhere, which is sad. But in August, a short trip up to Scottsdale. That's for work though. But going to Carlsbad, California for a weekend. I am actually developing a business partnership with a beachfront property there, and I'm going to
Oh,
visit
nice.
that. And I'm actually going to promote them a bit. And then I'm off to Washington, D.C. at the end of the month for a little bit more business, but a little bit of pleasure. I'm going to do the sightseeing in DC that I've done before, but my wife hasn't. So I'm taking her, and she's going to get to experience all of that.
Oh, nice. Excellent.
It'll be fun.
Yeah, that will be a lot of fun. So this has been really eye-opening and exciting. So Paul, where can people find Seadog Travels? Where can they reach out if they want to connect with you and plan their next island or water-themed travel vacation experience?
Well, just go online to seadogtravels.com. That's our website. I run it. If you fill out a form or the contact form, it'll come straight to me, and I'll be able to help you out. And one thing we are focusing on, or starting to focus on, is group travel explicitly. I mean, I'll help anybody. I'll help you. I'll help anybody as far as that goes. But as far as for the business in general, both leisure and business groups travel. So whether it's cruises, whether it's group tours, what have you, and I can custom make anything. I'm a little creative, so I can custom create something for you, and go from there. And phone number, well, our email address is just travel@seadogtravels.com, or just give me a call. It's on the website, and you'll talk to me. It comes to this phone right here.
Okay.
So it all comes straight to me, and I have a couple other people working with the company for tour guides like you and I are going to start working together for Maine.
Yes.
And,
And I
I
love
don't know if
Maine.
I told you, I run a bunch of Facebook groups for the different destinations where we travel. Maine's one of them, and it's my biggest group. It's now hit 80,000.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And I just it's all community building. That's what that is. People who really like to go into a particular place. And that one is the first one really that organically exploded and grew faster than I ever expected.
Right.
So, and Maine travel is, once June arrives, everybody goes to Maine.
Oh, exactly. I was gonna say we all want to escape the heat wave that's set into most of the United States right now. It's like
Yeah.
it's just brutal.
So, and I'm responsive, I will do my best to help anybody with their travels. And the nice thing about the associations I have is I have access to discounted hotel rates, private villa and vacation rental networks.
Oh,
Uh,
nice.
I can actually, the guy who I booked in 3 days.
Yes.
No, I'm sorry, it wasn't him. It was somebody else in May. It's not often, but sometimes I can get air travel deals.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
This person I'm talking to, he went to Jamaica for a week and a half. I got him first class air a basically at the regular rate,
Oh my
an
goodness.
economy for first class at economy rate, and
Wow.
that doesn't happen very
No,
often.
that doesn't.
Yeah, it doesn't, but it does happen. And being dialed into the right networks is what the public doesn't have access to, and that's one of the reasons you should use a travel professional, because you don't have access to all the discounts just going to Expedia or whatever.
Right, right.
And that's why if you're really cost conscious, that's where we can help in a lot of cases anyway, uh, because
Well, and to be
having your
dialed, yeah,
suppliers.
and to be dialed into like some of the unique experiences, like you just mentioned with Puerto Rico. Now you've been, local guides, smaller properties that may not have advertising budget to promote themselves, so they're not as easily discoverable. But, giving Paul a call is highly, I always say that if someone's been and visited and can support a family run in or a guide that's local to the island, to that destination, you're going to have an incredible experience because they're passionate about what they do. And that just comes through. And you're going to walk away with, I think, a better experience overall.
Absolutely. Nope, you're right. So it's and I'm just getting started. This is obviously the thing I'm going to do the rest of my life. So I have to live to be at least 100, because there's a lot that I want to do that I haven't done yet. So
Right. I agree. So check out seadogtravels.com and your Facebook. Do you have a Facebook page then for Sea Dog Travels or each destination?
I do. Just search for Seadog Travels. You'll find me. Also on LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube. I'm really focusing on the YouTube page. I've got some Puerto Rico videos that I put up there recently. That's starting to grow slowly. So yeah, just search for Seadog Travels and you'll see what comes up.
Great. Thank you so much, Paul. I so appreciate this.
Hey, thanks, April. I appreciate you having me here.